Hey, it's Jeremy, Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, and I share my creative process here with you on the internet. If you would like to support this channel, get additional bonus live streams once to twice a month, get tons of free bonus content. You can see my comic book pages before anyone else, work in progress gifts, Patreon exclusive blog posts, and more. You can go to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. For as little as $2 a month, get tons of bonus content, help keep these videos free for the public. If you would like to get the best of my social media posts, I make animated GIFs that are showing my works in progress. You can sign up for my newsletter. Instead of searching, following me on Twitter, Instagram, all the other platforms, get delivered right to your inbox once a month. Also, I'll write a few little extra, posts just for you guys to see a little bit more behind the scenes, behind the curtain. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comics, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up a copy of Eye of the Gods. This is the first book that I published. I'm the writer and artist. This is a self-contained graphic novel. It's a psychological thriller about a man who's cursed with visions he cannot control. It's called Eye of the Gods. Or you can pick up volume 1 of my comic book, Morning Star. It's an 8-issue series. This book has issues 1 through 4. It's the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven told as a Western. You are currently watching me on this live stream working on the cover for the 8th and final issue. So if you want to see where it all starts, go over to amazon.jeremy.net. It's also available on Comixology and Kindle if you read digitally. All right. Hey, Amar's in the chat. Hey, how you doing, brother? Morning. Let's see here. All right. And so this cover has come a long way. I've been going back and forth in terms of having him with one gun versus 2 guns, pointing away from the camera versus pointing towards the camera. And, in the end, thanks to the urgings of my buddy Carl Altstetter, I ended up merging the best of the 2 different versions that I had posted for feedback, and I think I've got something that works pretty well here. Now I'm just pretty much adding the flames and a little bit of highlights, and we're just about done with this guy. There's also a little bit of lighting I have to add on the wings as well, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this came out. The one thing that I was going to do was I was going to share. Really, I wanted to get the reaction of my buddy Carl, since he's the one who encouraged me to make these changes in the first place. I wanted to see what his reactions were to it with line art versus without line art. This is it. Let me zoom in a little bit more. So this is it without line art. And I've been trying to move towards a more painted look. And it's funny because when I was taking painting classes, in college, my painting instructors actually told me, and they meant this as a compliment. I really don't think they were trashing me. They said that it looks like I'm not so much a painter as it is that I draw with paint. So I'm more of a drawer. And as I was looking at this, it's funny, as I'm looking at this now and I realize I need to adjust the hat because it is too skewed to one side. Like his face is right in the middle, but I've got too much of the hat off to the right-hand side. I've got to go in and fix that. It's weird. The things that you pick up, even when you've been working on a project for hours and hours and hours, like you'll get to close to the final goal and be like, something wrong here. And that's always how it is. You catch stuff that you just didn't catch before. Now it's off to the right because originally the whole head was facing to the right, and it's more sort of like where the edge of the hat over here, on the left side of the head, that's really kind of where his head ended, and he was facing more towards a 3/4 upward shot. So I think I have the fact that I've slapped a front forward face onto a body that was originally designed for a 3/4 shot. But anyway, this is it without line art. And see, this is it with line art. And I think that it is just stronger with the line art. Just makes the thing a little bit more crisp, makes it pop a little bit more. Yeah, no, that's the flames. Yeah, I think I'm going to keep the line art. And it's odd that I went through all of this because I drew line art before I went in and painted all the tones that were underneath. And then I changed the composition, and now I'm redrawing the line art. But it's reminding me that I think I supposed to going for this painterly style that I wanted. I maybe do need to just commit to the fact that I'm a traditional comic book artist. I mean, I'm drawing digitally, but draw my line art and then add my color instead of trying to quote unquote paint. Get a little coffee in my bloodstream. All right. Well, let me fix the head. And then it's just painting in flames. So, I mean, at this point, this guy is pretty much done here. The layer that has the logo and the issue number, all of that is a white layer, and it's just on multiply right now. When I actually merge the letter pages with the gray toned art, when I come to this page, it's just I'm not gonna have all those frames on there, and there's actually a yellow circle around the issue number, and there's solid color filling in the letters, so you'll actually be able to read them as opposed to it just sort of vanishing underneath the wing detail. So let me fix the head here, which means I'm also gonna have to adjust the line art. Son of a bitch. Well, you know what? That's just how it goes. All right. I'm gonna get rid of some layers that I don't need because I don't want them to accidentally confuse me. All right, turn that off. Get in here with my flats. Oh wait, I've got multiple layers of the flats. Oh, I see. That's the old version. I don't need either of those. So turn off my alpha lock. Come in here and let's just should probably get rid of the flames too, just so I can see. Oh wait, well, the flames are just outlining him. There's no real extra thing there. Oh no, there is. Let's see. See, Andy's in the chat. It says great looking work. Well, thank you, Andy. Thanks for stopping by. I'm just coming in here and cleaning up some mistakes. I think probably the easiest way for me to do this is to pick this yellow that's kind of the edge of the hat. And where I really want this part of that, also let me double check that I'm on the right layer. Yeah, I was about to start painting on the flame layer. All right. So just going to pick the new place that I want this yellow mark to be. And I think given that his hair is out a little bit, and you can see kind of the side of his skull, probably place it, whoops, brush is too big. Let's bring that down. Let's say that probably a little small there. So we bring this in about here. So now I'm just going to move all of those different gradations, the orange, to paint that in a little bit closer, and then the red a little bit closer, and I'm going to erase out those tones that are on the other side. And then I'm going to add a little bit more on the right side. I mean, on the left side. Maybe move move this in a little bit more than that. So let's see here. Andy's saying it's a mistake to you because it doesn't match what's in your head, but I can see in your head. So what I see looks awesome. Tough to say objective, eh? Yes, yeah, that's very true. And it's something that it took me years to realize that viewers do not see, or people reading your comics, they don't see the comic that you had in your head. They only see the comic that's in front of them. And if they enjoy it and they like the way that everything turned out, they don't really care. And for me, that's kind of how I try to define things that are what I say, quote unquote, mistakes, because there's things in there that are just not what I wanted or not what I intended. But if it is if it conveys the story and it's not technically flawed, then I'll fix it. For me, the reason why I'm fixing this is because when you generally draw a hat, let me make a couple of marks that I'm just going to undo here. But generally speaking, the hat sitting on the head, I'm going to put some black lines in here. You'd want the hat to feel like it's wrapping around the skull. So like this black line here and that black line there, that's about where the hat should line up. And you can see that it's shifted to the right of that. And that's because the head was facing in a different direction and we were looking at it from a different angle. And the way I originally drew the head fit the face that was on this original drawing. This thing has gone through massive surgery over the past 2 weeks of the last 2 live streams that I posted. So it's more of me. That's one of those things where it doesn't fall into, it's not quite what was in my head. It's just, that's something I look at and I'm like, that's actually a mistake. I need to fix that. And to be honest, I probably could have gotten away with not fixing it. But it's also the fact that it is a cover. If I were drawing this on an interior comic book page, again, I probably would have just let it go. I just was, all right, well, not every panel is perfect. But I try to make a cover feel as finished and the best possible version of an illustration I can. I put extra love into the cover. That's what draws people into the book. I want people to feel like the work inside will live up to what's on the cover. So that's the reason for the extra fussiness. You're right. It's probably to an extra degree, but and this has been an ongoing theme on this live stream. I don't know how many you've seen in the past, but it's a constant conversation about finished versus perfect. And I think that I have hidden it in my constant talking about, not beating yourself up and, you're going to make mistakes and, just continue making the best work you can and try and grow and learn with each page. I think that my OCD perfectionist side really is coming out over these past few months. And I can't hide that anymore. So I'm a fraud. All of you, I'm a fraud. I'm as neurotic and obsessive about my art as the rest of you. The truth is out there. That is actually true. I think the positive shine I try to put on it is that I try not to be negative about that obsessiveness. I try to treat it simply as it's part of the creative process to try and make things perfect, and it's part of the process of reality to tell you that you can control only so much. And I try to make peace with that and find a healthy balance. That's, I think, more of what my approach is try to find a healthy balance towards all of this that gets me to make something that I'm happy with in a timely fashion. And even that, when we talk about artists failing in terms of not meeting their goals, that is something that I fail at, because I don't say screw it and just cram work out at like a deadline pace, deadline speed. If I am genuinely not happy with something, I do take my time and finesse it and noodle over it. And that has been the ongoing, topic that we've been revolving around for the past 2 live streams, is me going forward and seeing what it's like if I really do take on that just, screw it, get it done and move on to the next piece attitude. We will see what that's going to look like. Let's see here. Andy says, I hear you. I'm actually redoing a commercial project right now because I got too fussy with it. So I'm trying to loosen up while starting over. Well, with commercial projects, that's, I consider this commercial in the sense that it's a book that I'm self-publishing, but at the same time, it is personal work. But I think the criteria for a commercial project, if it's anytime it's something that you're planning to sell, even if it's personal work, there's a commercial aspect to it. But I think we have different considerations in there in terms of wanting to have a certain standard that we want to make sure our work adheres to. So, let's see, Amar says, I was up on Clubhouse. He says, I finally got access to be able to create a room, so now I need to figure out the room name. Okay. He says, I'm thinking ICAG for indie comics, animation, and games. So that would ICAAG. Well, I don't think you need to put an extra A in there for the and. ICAG, I think works. UL says, I think I don't give my art value. That is a problem that haunts all of us as artists. I think that there is a fear of being judged, that our art isn't good enough. And that's one of the reasons I think why artists either don't put their work on sale or tell people they're selling it, or they price it too low because they are afraid that putting it on sale and then getting no sales will be a pro forma rejection of their work, a repudiation. And I understand that fear. I share that fear. The very first comic convention I ever attended as an artist, I brought a small sketchbook, and I've shown it here on this stream before. I'm not going to go dig it out right now. But I made an ash can, which is like a small, like Kinko's photocopied, like staple stitched booklet. And it was the first chapter of my Eye of the Gods graphic novel. It was the first like 30 pages. And I put that into a little booklet with a cover that was a one color cover. So it was a black, white, and red. And I got that printed up, and I made like maybe 50 booklets. And I went to a small convention in LA, and I sold, out of the 50 that I brought, I sold 45 of them, and I saved the last 5 because there were some I wanted to give away to a few friends, and then there were a couple I wanted to hold on to for myself, just for keepsake, memory. And I thought it was so weird that on one hand, I got this table at a convention, and you're there to sell work, so you expect to sell work. That's why people come there. But I was thinking about the fact that I was this artist who had no track record to speak of, and I was very self-conscious of my artwork. Not, I'd say probably about to the same degree that I am now. But even with people never having heard of me before, I sat down, I face-to-face with people. I told them about my comic. They checked it out, and I, came about as close to selling out of the print run as you can at a small show. And I tell you this not because, oh, I'm awesome and yeah, I was able to sell moved books. It's more of, if I compare that comic to what I'm doing now, I have definitely improved significantly as an artist. I'm proud of the work I put out then, but I can recognize the growth that I've made since then. And what I want to say in terms of valuing your own work is give people the chance to value your work. I think that, you know, the fear of putting your comics out there, and the fear of rejection or fear of not getting any sales, it's a real fear, and it can happen. I mean, I've had conventions since then when I had very, very low sales. And then, you know, it goes back and forth. And sometimes it's about the convention. Sometimes it's about me and the mental space I'm in that day, and I don't do a good job of presenting my own work in terms of telling people about it. Sometimes it's at shows that are more mainstream focused than indie focused. And, you know, they're just, I don't hit the audience. There's a lot of different things that that can happen. But you should give people the chance to appreciate and value your work instead of rejecting them before they reject you. And whether that's, you know, starting a Patreon, whether it's putting it on Webtoons or making a digital comic that you're selling on Comixology, you know, or, you know, when things open up again post-pandemic, making a small booklet, you know, of your work and selling that at show at a, you know, maybe not even a comic show. If there's like an art fair or something that's local to you, but just putting your work in front of people and giving them a chance to purchase it, to support you, you might be pleasantly surprised. You know, I mean, I know that I was, and I will tell you that I love comic books enough that if I had had really low sales, it would not have killed my spirit and my desire to create comics. It wouldn't. I love making comics too much. But I mean, yeah, it would have been a blow to my ego, but I would have kept going. But I think that the blow to your ego is worth the risk for the validation that you will get by actually showing your work to strangers as opposed to friends and family, and having them say, I think this is cool. I would like to pay you money for this. I think that is an amazing feeling. It really, it put rocket fuel in my engines in terms of my creative process. It really helped drive me forward in terms of putting my, in terms of completing that graphic novel. So there is no reward without risk, but I'm not saying you have to be super macho about it and say, my work is awesome, everyone should love this. And, you know, you put the work out there, and if the response is not great, you can use that to say, all right, well, what is it that I feel is missing from this? And maybe even, you know, talking to people face to face and seeing how their reaction is may give you a good idea of what to lean into. I know that I've definitely gotten feedback from people in person that made me think, maybe I should try doing this work or that work. Just seeing what people look at and gravitate to. Yeah, this hat is going to need a little more doctoring. I thought that this whole live stream would be me just painting the flames and finishing this piece out. Instead, it's mostly me doctoring this hat. Let's see here. All right, I kind of ran past. There's a bunch of people in the chat. Let's see here. Amar says, yeah, I mean, club. I think I want to start off with serial rooms where I can get actors to come in and read indie comic book artists comics. That sounds like a good idea. Flash Rebirth says, what's your favorite artist? It's funny, I was just talking to my buddy Carl Altseder about this the other day. He said, what is your Mount Rushmore of artists? And for me, I have 3 sets. I have a set for storytelling, which is John Byrne, Walt Simonson, Frank Miller, and Will Eisner. And I'm not saying that in terms of they are the greatest of all time. I'm talking about the ones whose storytelling impacted me personally. Although I think a lot of people would also agree in terms of, well, I mean, if you're talking about greatest of all time, Kirby would have to be on the list. But I didn't come to Kirby till much later in life. So this is specifically my personal list of artists that impacted me. So those are the ones who, when I first started reading, whose storytelling I gravitated to. Now, in terms of style, it would have to be Bill Sienkiewicz at the top. And I know that doesn't show up in my work. I'll explain that in a minute. Bill Sienkiewicz at the top, then David Mack, and then Ashley Wood and Kent Williams. And they do very loose and expressive painterly work. And that's really what I was into in high school and early college. But when I got out of college and I started, trying to make comics on my own, I was really dissatisfied with a lot of my personal attempts. And I spent a lot of time looking at all of those artists, particularly Ashley Wood, because I wasn't trying to ape Ashley Wood's style, but I had an idea in my mind of what, like, Bill Sienkiewicz was probably my biggest influence in high school and college. And that's also, I think, towards the end of college was when I discovered David Mack's work. And I had a picture in my mind of what my artwork would be like. I just couldn't draw well enough for it, but I had a picture in my mind of what I wanted my artwork to eventually become. And then I discovered Ashley Wood's work, and it was kind of like, oh, crap. That's it. He's already doing what I want to do. And I can't out Ashley Wood. He's, So then I realized, I started looking at all of those artists. And I started asking myself, well, what do they have all in common? What is it that draws me to all three of these artists? And what it was is I realized that their work is incredibly expressive, but it holds up structurally. And what I mean by that is just the actual anatomic draftsmanship. And I know that you may think in terms of like someone like Ashley Wood or Kent Williams, that there's a lot of exaggeration in those works. You might not think necessarily, you may not think of, well, actually Kent Williams does a lot of figure work. But someone like Bill Sienkiewicz, he can do so much exaggeration and expressive work on there. You might not necessarily think of them in terms of just traditional draftsmanship. But that's the reason why their work works. Is because beneath all of that, the exaggeration and expressiveness, there's strong figure drawing fundamentals. So I thought, all right, well, what I really need is to just learn how to draw better. And then I started taking figure drawing classes and consistently. But that leads me to my third set of art Mount Rushmore. And that would be artists who, just in terms of looking at their draftsmanship, I was inspired to just in terms of improving my fundamental draftsmanship. And it's hard to look at someone like a David Mack or a Bill Sienkiewicz and look at studying them just for the figure drawing, because there's so much expressive style on top of it that, see, normally people use style to hide things. Instead, they had strong drawing fundamentals, and then the expressiveness it layers on top of it. It adds to it. Whereas with me, I was just hiding bad drawing. So I'd say in terms of just draftsmanship, I would say it was Mark Schultz, Brian Stelfreeze, and even though he's not a comic book artist, Andrew Loomis. That's about the time I really started studying Andrew Loomis pretty regularly. So let's see here. Let me scroll down and get a little bit caught up. And let's see here. Yeah, Amar was talking about the having people reading indie comics on his in his clubhouse room. And he said that the weekly show was one of his ideas. So I think that's a pretty good idea. And hey, Bill Crabtree is in the chat. Thanks, Bill. I mean, having an expert colorist in the chat and saying kind words means a tremendous amount. That's high praise, and I appreciate it. By the way, I actually read issue 2 of Berserker last night, and I really enjoyed it. And I hope you'll take this as a compliment, but the color work really reminded me a lot of Lynn Varley's work on 300. It felt more vivid than her palette, but it's kind of like, it reminded me of the muted palette that Varley leaves, but with like a little bit of electricity charged into it. I really enjoyed it. So that's that book, it looks awesome. Let's see here. Yuel says, I think I will try showing more stuff. And he says, I like Todd McFarlane. I'm learning from David Finch now mostly. Yeah, you know what? Finch has a great YouTube channel. I've only watched a few of his videos, and that's more about not having enough hours in the day than it is me not being into it. There's a lot of artists that I follow online. I do not want to rename this panel. I want to alpha lock it. There we go. Yeah, but I think that he's got going into a lot of drawing fundamentals on there, which I think is really good. It's definitely a great artist to to learn from. Much like there's a wide variety of great comic book storytellers in a lot of different styles, there's a lot of great places online and on YouTube to learn, both people that have classes and courses, as well as just people that are doing great content on their channels. So I think these days you really can learn enough to become, if you put in the work, I think you can learn enough to become a professional artist just from putting in the work and studying a lot of the great content that's out there online. Let's see. I see Martin's in the chat. Hey. Bill Crabtree says, "Oh, cool." He says, I was thinking about that book. Seemed like Ron was in his drawing. Yeah, and I can, even the first issue felt even more like, I felt sort of a Sin City feel in terms of like the hard black lines and the strong silhouettes in the storytelling. It was like a less cartoony, more action-driven feeling like that. Like the first one felt more Sin City, but I think because Volume 2 was so much more of that prehistoric warrior culture, that's really what made it resonate with kind of that 300 feel. But I mean, for both of them, I love your work on that book. It looks fantastic. And it's funny. I have Ron Garney's Modern Masters book, but I know he did a run on Conan a few years back, maybe a while back now. I still haven't had a chance to read that. Honestly, I don't even read too many current comics. Most of the stuff that I pick up tends to be older books that I missed somewhere along the way and just haven't had time to catch up on. But I think that reading Berserker reminds me that I wanted to read more of Garney's other work. Yeah. Now I'm just sort of molding the shape of the where the shadow side of the hat is. Which, of course, in this blown out environment, the shadow side isn't even black. It's just, a dark red. And now I'm undoing a little bit of what I just did. I kind of do that. I'll kind of like move stuff around, make a few lines, and be like, oh, wait, no, this is what I want. No, that's not what I want. And I also feel like these lines are a little bit too small. That's better. If I make them a little bit too detailed, then they start distracting the eye. It's better to have them almost more like little hatch marks. All right, so I think that works. Now I just have to fix the line art, and then I can go back to the flames. So, let's see. Turn that background back on. Just my line art. All right, so now I just have to fix this, and we're good. Wait, hang on. I have this on multiply at 75%, so I gotta turn this back up to normal so I can pick the proper color. Which is not really that different from the color that it was showing, but I try to, sometimes I can get a bad habit when I've got layer effects going on or different blend modes, and I'll just color pick. And then I go and I start painting on a layer, and it looks completely wrong because what I color picked is what I'm seeing on the monitor, whereas the actual value on that layer is different, significantly different because of the blend mode or the opacity setting. So I try to take note of that when I'm coming in and making adjustments like this. So let me first get in here and fix those lines. Trim the hat down here. Let's see here. UL says, I learned inking and brushing from your channel. Well, that is very very flattering. I mean, I still feel like I am learning as I go, but I'm glad that it's been useful to you, because I think to a certain degree, sometimes when you see somebody who has been, inking or doing any particular art skill for many many years, you come in to try it and you simply can't do the things that they can do. And I think for me, I'm somebody who I'm new enough at it in terms of inking with a brush. Like I grew up, you've heard this story. I grew up trying to ink with a brush every 5 years since I was 15, and I would just do it for a few months and just get frustrated and give up. And it wasn't until, even my first graphic novel was inked with with speedball nibs, the larger calligraphy nibs, not the crow quills. And it wasn't until I started Morningstar that I'd really figured out how to ink with a brush. But I think that there's something useful, beneficial in terms of seeing somebody who's newer at a craft, because I still remember what it's like to not be able to do what I'm trying to do. If that makes any sense. I'm aware of it, perhaps self-conscious of it, but aware enough of the things that I couldn't do that it's sort of like when I'm talking about the approach, I'm still approaching it from a newcomer's point of view. So Bill says he's coloring issue 3 while he watches this. Cool, thank you. I'll keep that in mind when I read issue 3. Let's see here. Actually, I maybe came in, let me turn off the background layer again, because yeah, that's what I thought. I did not leave the yellow at the very edges of the hat. I did not leave that visible. Again, this goes back to what we're always talking about, Amar, the perfect versus finished. Am I being nitpicky? Probably. I wonder if I need to adjust something. Something keeps banging around while I'm doing this, and I think it's my cutting rail. I have it hanging on a board behind my drawing table. And I think it's swinging when I'm erasing or drawing. That's exactly what it was. When I'm drawing or erasing or whatever movement, it's rattling around on there. All right. There we go. Just give it a little extra space so that line can show through. All right. So after this, then I need to export out all of the colored pages. So I can bring them to my desktop computer and merge the letters with the colors on, or with the gray tones. And I'm going to be using Affinity Designer for that instead of Photoshop. I cut the cord in terms of the Adobe platform for now. Oh, I've mentioned this before. Yeah, so I'm not saying that I will never use Adobe products again, because who knows, there may be a point where I have like a freelance project I'm working on where I have to use Illustrator. But for the most part, Affinity Designer seems to handle all of my my lettering needs. I know there's some people who do lettering right in Photoshop, or I know Clip Studio Paint. See, that's the crazy thing. Clip Studio Paint, you can letter directly in Clip Studio Paint, but I've just, for some reason, that program just does not grab me, and I have not been using it. But I also like the idea that with Vector, doing my lettering in a separate Vector program, that if for some reason I needed to bring it into Adobe Illustrator, or even, not that I have time to do this, because I really don't, but I thought about the fact that for a lot of indie artists, you're looking for not just low-cost solutions, but you're looking for free solutions. I started using Inkscape recently with my wife because she's getting into some graphic design work. And as opposed to getting her a new platform, getting her new software, I don't know necessarily how far she's going to go with it. So I thought, let's just get Inkscape, because it's a free vector-based program for some of the design work that we're doing. And it occurred to me that that would be useful for a lot of artists, indie artists, who don't necessarily even have the budget for going out and buying something like Affinity Designer, that maybe it would be worthwhile to do a tutorial in lettering in Inkscape, because it's a free program. But the reason why I don't think that I will do it is not because I don't want to be helpful. It's because I haven't used Inkscape for lettering, and I would have to figure out the learning curve and the ins and outs of doing it on that software as well. And I'm just like, I could be using that time to make more art or make more comics, as opposed to learning how to letter in a program that I don't even use, so that people who can't afford Affinity Designer can learn how to can see software that they can letter in. I guess in a perfect world where I had as much free time as I wanted, I would do that just as a public service for artists. But as it stands now, my time has been somewhat limited and crunched, particularly with the project I'm working on my wife with. Let's see. Rosa Studios says, I don't know, you can use StreamYards like this. You can letter in Procreate also. Well, I have not tried lettering in Procreate per se. I mean, I've used text in Procreate, but the thing that I find, and I have a video on my YouTube channel on lettering in Affinity Designer, is that it's doing lettering in a vector-based program as opposed to a pixel-based program. And I find that the lettering comes out more crisp. And I have enough, there's a certain skill you get in terms of using vector programs after a while. Yeah, no, that's messing it up. Let me undo that. Yeah, all right, now I'm just fussing. I need to stop. There's a certain level of proficiency that you develop in terms of working with vector programs, in terms of a workflow of creating, duplicating text, manipulating it in vector programs. It just seems like it's easier to work with text and manipulate it faster in a vector-based program than it is in Photoshop, Procreate. Again, I haven't used Clip Studio Paint's lettering, and I imagine that that's probably better because it's a comic book. It's a program that is focused on making comics. But that said, I've been using both. I've been using Illustrator for years, and that makes Procreate not Procreate. It makes Affinity Designer pretty easy to pick up. And in terms of using both of those, it's something where it's very quick for me to both create and revise text. And that's the reason why I've mainly used that. So it's not necessarily that I'm pushing it on other people. I think you should use whatever works for you. But when it comes to encouraging other creators, I will say that something vector-based feels better for me in terms of lettering. So that would be, again, if you have Adobe Illustrator, that's probably the number one, that the thing that I would put at the highest level, but I'm not using the Adobe suite anymore. Then Affinity Designer. And then after that, I would probably say something like Inkscape, just because the fact that Inkscape, it has fewer features than either Affinity Designer or Photoshop. But again, it's free. And I think that that's, indie artists are cost sensitive. We're price sensitive. A lot of us don't have the budget to spend on software that we don't necessarily already have. But I mean, if you're getting good results lettering in Procreate and you're happy with it, by all means, continue. All right. So now I'm happy with the hat position. Got the flames creeping in here. And actually, I need to zoom out a little bit more, not like all the way out, but there's very much a tendency to just completely zoom in and lose all sense of perspective of what you're doing. Now, here's the real interesting thing. I need to decide if I want to have these flames just eating him up from the front as well. My OCD. That is a thing, like, just work in digital art. I'm always checking to make sure I'm painting on the right layer, because you really don't want to go down that road. And and that's actually another thing, is unlike Photoshop, Procreate, I don't think it has a revert. You have to just keep going backwards and backwards and backwards in terms of how many undos. And I don't know what the limit is on undos, especially considering the fact that the video, you can export a video of an entire project. So I feel like it has to have a catalog of every single stroke in the entire piece. But, with Photoshop, there have been times when I've been working and I may realize I've been painting for 5 or 10 minutes on the wrong layer. And then I realize, okay, yeah, it sucks, but if I just hit revert to previously saved, I tend to save just by instinct every 5 or 10 minutes. So I'm like, all right, maybe I lost 10 minutes work, but I can just undo that and go back to where I was, and before, and pick up there. Whereas with this, if I mess up, I can just keep undo for however long it takes to get back there. But who knows? Then it becomes a thing where I'm trying to undo by, it becomes just a matter of trying to judge which strokes are generally going to get me back to where I wanted to be. All right, now I need to move this little thumbnail that I have out of the way. Not out of the way per se, but I need to move it down so I can. It's not it's not super important, but I kind of wanted the flames that are going behind the logo to not, I don't want it to be so much white that you lose the yellow, but I still want to get that sense of like flames kind of licking at the logo and running behind it. And definitely not licking at the logo, because I do want the logo to feel like it is sitting above the surface as opposed to me painting on the logo. That stylistically could be a look. It could be kind of a cool thing, but it just isn't what I'm going for. So it's just a matter of me figuring out where I want the flames that are going behind the logo to exist. And this is something a little bit different because the gun that I'm painting now, because originally every version that I've done in terms of thumbnails for this piece was Lucifer holding one gun instead of two. So now comes that decision of having both guns encased in flames, because I always wanted to have it where Lucifer's hand, the gun that is on our right, I wanted to have that hand feel like it was on fire. So he's shooting while he's burning. But with the other hand that I haven't had in previous versions, I think I'm just going to have the flames behind the gun, not necessarily over it. It's like his wings are catching fire, but he himself is not on, that other hand is not on fire. And I keep thinking of Beavis and Butthead as I say fire, fire, fire. I heard somewhere that they were going to do a reboot of Beavis and Butthead. I don't know what happened with that. Let's just instead have this flame almost compositionally like it's a little arrow pointing at the bottom of this this pentagram here. I want to leave more yellow space around here so that when I have flames on the other side of Lucifer's head, on the left side of his head, that it'll pop more. Like I said, the biggest problem I had with the earliest version of this, the first version of this cover was the contrast. The fact that there was not enough contrast in it. Like the whole thing was high key. It was all whites and yellows and oranges. And there just was not enough of contrasting hues. So that's where I brought in all of the dark reds and dark oranges that are still warm colors. So it's keeping it within that this fiery palette, but it had enough contrast in terms of value that now I've got a tonal range and it reads. In fact, that's another thing I started doing is there isn't a black and white filter in Procreate, but I put a layer on top, and I think I showed you guys this last week. So I put a layer on top and filled it with black, and then I just changed it to color mode, and then you can immediately, it just converts the piece basically to black and white. So that way I can go back and check my values versus my colors. And this actually helped me out a lot in the early stages when I was drawing the little thumbnail. That's how I was able to work out what my what colors I wanted to use, was by finding warm colors that had a dark enough value to give me the contrast I need, so it'll read when I say values, you understand that I'm talking about light and dark tonality versus hues, which is the actual colors. So it's a bit of a challenge in working on a piece that's not monochromatic, but all in the warm color family. Trying to get the values to be in a range that gives me a fair amount of contrast. So now I've just got little bits of flame peeking out from behind the logo. And I think that I am going to leave it all in warm. Originally in this, I had blue at the edge of the cover. Okay, hang on, let me turn this on and let me change this to white now. So this is going to be the trim of the comic book page here, this white frame. And originally, I had planned this so that sort of towards the edges, you would have blue like a night sky coming in kind of behind the logo, a little bit around the edges. But I don't think it really needs it. I thought that it made like kind of a nice, shocking pop of color to have the cool colors come in on such an incredibly warm composition. But no, I think it works without it. So make sure again I'm on the right layer. For me, the hardest part of these finishing points on a piece is trying to not overdo it. Trying to figure out how much is just enough. Like, I think we've all been through the experience of overworking a piece. And to a certain degree, digital, I think, in a way makes it harder, because when you're working traditionally, you overwork a piece, you keep going, and you're like, oh, I ruined this piece. I went too far. With digital, because you can just go too far and then undo or revert, you end up going back and forth and saying, all right, well, I went too far. Let me bring it back. And then you bring it back and you're like, oh, well, that's not far enough. And then you're just like, you're trying to move the needle of what is finish on this piece. You just keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking, trying to get that to a finished place. You know what? Where is that clip? I where is, oh, here it is. So hopefully this will not block the camera. I actually got a little ring light. Well, I've had a ring light behind my monitor for a while now so that my face would show up better on screen. But I finally got a clip for it to hang above my my laptop while I'm coloring. I don't know if that's that much better. Well, seems like it makes a difference. All right. Not that my face is super important here. Let's keep the focus on the artwork. All right. Let's see. Yeah, so at this point, it would be real easy for me to just keep going back and forth and back and forth and add and take away, add and take away. And I'm trying to find just the right amount of what I need to make this thing feel complete. And for me, the last part of finishing is going to be, there's some touch up to the wings that I want to do. I'm actually going to go there and add some oranges and yellows to the wings, and then a glow coming off of just kind of a little whitish glow to kind of give it a little bit of a fiery haze. I'm going to put that on a separate layer above the flames. You know, and it's funny, as I'm drawing this, it just occurred to me, one of my favorite Denzel movies is Man on Fire. And this is definitely a Man on Fire. It's not particularly funny, but it just occurred to me. I mean, hell, it's an art show. It's not a comedy show. Although it occurs to me, you know, I look at some people, YouTubers that do art-related YouTube, but you know, I think the ones that are more successful are people whose channel is not necessarily even that much about the craft of making art, and more that they're doing entertaining videos. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I don't look at that and say, no, man, you should keep it pure. I think that every artist should strive. If you're doing stuff on YouTube, I think that it's worthwhile to make it as entertaining as one can. But the question is how to do that and be authentic about it. How to be entertaining where it's not that you're just like doing stunts for stunts' sake, but you're doing the stuff that you want to do and making it compelling. And I think that is where I have not necessarily cracked that nut yet in terms of saying, you know, obviously, if you're watching this, you're interested. But it's not the same as watching something that you're like, wow, this is compelling, and I cannot stop watching. Although that might be the same as someone being insecure about their artwork, me being insecure about how entertaining my channel is. Maybe I just need to shut up and work and let people judge it on their own merits. But I do pay attention to those kind of things, like artists that have like interesting art challenges and fun games that they're playing with their audience, stuff like that. And I'm like, I wonder if I should try to be more entertaining. Although I also know that there are people who do ASMR videos where it's their, I mean, I don't have the voice for ASMR. My voice is not, I don't think it's soothing enough. But there's also people who have drawing ASMR where the sound is the little, I don't want to do that with my Apple stylus, but hearing the sound of the pencil going on the surface, you know, will is the soothing ASMR sound. Let's see. I see it's the Sketches. He says, hi, I'm Sketches. I just cruise through art streams. Well, Sketches, thank you for stopping by. I draw comics, and I'm working on a comic book cover right now, and I'm finishing up the cover for the last issue of an 8-issue series I've been working on. I hope you'll stick around, and if you enjoy them, please subscribe. And if you got any questions, feel free to ask. I draw a little bit, I ramble a little bit, I check the chat and talk with people in the chat a little bit. You know, it's real low key around here. We keep it casual. Rosa Studio says art channels are difficulty just as much as entertainment. Just as much entertainment as art on YouTube today. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's tons of great artists online and on YouTube. There's tons of great entertaining content. And I think that the artists who can do both the entertainment and the craft, that's like the golden spot. You know, kind of like in comics, there's artists who are great storytellers, And there's artists who are beautiful draftsmen, but don't necessarily tell a compelling story. Like sometimes their storytelling might be a little hard to read, but the pictures are pretty to look at. But when you have somebody who makes beautiful art and also can tell a great story, that's the superpower right there. That is the magic comic creator. Let's see here. I'm probably not going to go an extra half hour, but I noticed that that again, we've already blown through an hour, you know, just in terms of making those fixes to the cover. You know what? I'm looking at this now zoomed out, and I think the lines that I am putting down, the flames around the hand, are distracting. And this is another reason why it's good to zoom out. And if you're working traditionally, prop your artwork up on the artboard and like go stand away from your drawing table. Just stand up a few feet away and look back at it. Being able to look at a distance at your work and see how it reads quickly will help you realize what things are adding to the page and what things are distracting. Because not all detail is equal. Some detail actively pulls the reader and pulls the eye away from important parts of the story. And it takes time to develop that skill. I mean, as you can tell by me just talking about it, you know, I'm erasing things because I went too far in terms of trying to make things, you know, adding too much detail. You want detail that is additive, not detail that is distracting. So I think what I need to do is keep what detail I am putting in terms of flames around his head, keep them closer to the neck and collar, and maybe put like one piece of like a burning ember floating past him, something like that. Let me make this a little bit bigger so I can make a smaller one next to it. Get that little contrast. Maybe have a couple of embers floating over his face. See, that's the thing. Now I'm kind of using the embers to draw attention to his face. Flecks of white on top of a large field of color definitely pop. And that's what I want these to feel like. It's just little burning embers of wood and ash floating up around him. And I intentionally do not use a brush that has a spray effect to it, because I know that there's a couple in Procreate that have that effect. But I choose to do it by hand. That way I'm conscious that each dot that I'm putting there is a choice, as opposed to I'm just splattering stuff all over the place because it looks cool. I like to be conscientious about that. And I'm getting to the point where it is probably almost too many. Not quite that, but I'm gonna have to refine and, okay, I don't need to put one there because that's gonna be hidden. Let's see here. It sketches says, ah, yes, you draw a little bit. Looking at that cover, I don't think it's, I don't think that's a little bit. Well, thanks, I appreciate it. Well, it's funny. The videos of the past 2 weeks, of live streams have been me fixing this cover. I actually started this cover, I want to say 4 months ago. It might have been even longer than that. And I was really struggling with it, wasn't happy with it. So I set it aside, and I had like 40 pages of gray tones to do. So I finished doing all the gray tones. Then I was done. And I'm like, all right, well, everything is done except for the cover. I got to come back and revisit it. So that's what like the past 2 live streams are in the on my page. If you look at the last 2 ones, it's me coming back to this cover and just not necessarily starting from scratch, but going back to the first one, analyzing what was wrong, which was contrast. There just wasn't enough contrast in terms of the values. And it's just been me going through and adjusting the values, skin tones, changing the pose. And I even show what the early version looked like in some of those live streams. So you can see where I went back and was like, okay, I need to move this, move that. Now I need to make a big decision about the piece, which is that in my thumbnail, I have the flames also coming in front of Lucifer. And I have to decide, do I want to do that? It's not even that I have to decide, because again, this is one of the beauties of working digital, is I'm just going to put flames in front, and if I don't like them, I'm going to erase them. I make it sound like it's this big dramatic buildup, but really it's like I just paint them in, and I'm like, does it work or does it not work? So I think at this point, I'm going to turn off that thumbnail, and I just gotta just decide to go for it. So I am getting close, I think, to wrapping up this stream. So another few more minutes. So if anybody has any other questions, throw them out there, and I'll probably end this with throwing that big bit of white on front of him and seeing how that looks. So there'll still be some final touch-ups, but I'll probably just end up posting the finished cover with the glows that I was going to add and all that sometime this week when that's done, because I really do hope that I'll be done with it. I thought actually that I would be done with it by the time this stream was ready to go live, but you know, best laid plans. Let's see here. It Sketches says, do you post this online or is this actually published? Well, it is published. I self-publish it. I have an Amazon store where you can purchase. Let me flip back to the big screen. We're getting to my wrap-up spiel, but I'm just going to go big so you can see it real quick, which is the book I'm working on. It's Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. This is volume 1. It has the first 4 issues, and you can pick that up at my Amazon store. It's amazon.gerimi.net. There is a link to that store in the description to the video. Brain's a little loopy. So yeah, I've been selling these books at comic conventions and through my website. I think that my next series that I do, I am going to try doing a web comic, and I think I may try doing it on Instagram. So we will see. I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to try webtoons, but more often than not, what I try to do is I try to post everything to my Patreon first. So I have a Patreon, which there's also a link for that in the description. Everything goes to my patrons first. And they get to see the books as I finish them and the pages as I finish them. And then I'm gonna make a small print run of these that people can order directly from my website. And then I'll get together on putting a trade collection that has the last 4 issues of this series. So there's a lot of people who been reading it in the trades, and that's the way that I've sold the most copies of this. I've been selling it at comic conventions for several years now. As I finish a new issue, put them out. But I think most of the people who have read this series have been reading it in the collection has the first 4 issues, and then if they see me at a convention and they're like, "Oh, you got a new issue out, issue 5, issue 6, issue 7," they've just been picking them up as I go along. So get a collected edition for the second half. Now, for those who are the super process junkies, I don't know if I'm going to launch it this year or not. Just depends on my schedule. But I've been playing on a Kickstarter campaign for what I call a process edition, because those who watch this channel know how much thumbnailing I do and how much extensive prep work I do for each issue. So, I'm drawing, I draw thumbnails, and I do layouts, my scripts and all that. There's probably about 100 pages worth of material that I actually draw for each 24-page comic. So I think what the Kickstarter campaign is going to be is for a book that's going to be the issue plus everything that goes into making it. And the reason why I'm waiting till now to do a Kickstarter campaign is simply because it takes me so long to finish each issue. I didn't want to do a campaign for issue 1 and then have people wait like years for me to finish issue 2. I just thought, let me get the whole series complete and then run a campaign for just the process edition of it. So if people want just the regular version, it'll be out there. But the process edition, and it's a little backwards in terms of the way I'm doing it. I think that really people probably should, if I had the capacity to finish it at the speed that I wanted, I would do all just, I would do a regular issue. Let's do issue 1, 2, 3, 4, collect edition, and do all of that on Kickstarter. But it's because of the time that it takes me to finish them. And I don't want to be in that position where people are waiting and waiting for the next issue on Kickstarter. People seem to be fine waiting for it if they just see me at conventions every couple of years. But I think when you're running Kickstarter campaigns, there's a big risk in losing the momentum, the audience momentum, if you're only running a campaign every 5 years as opposed to waiting until you have a completely finished project. So I'm going to mess with these flames that I've got here. And decide whether I want to keep them in front or not. Right now I'm leaning towards not, but I haven't really massaged them that much. So let's see here. Sarah says, on publishing, have you tried to go through traditional publishing streams, or has indie publishing always been a preferred way? For me, indie publishing has been preferred. I've never taken my artwork to a publisher and presented it to them. I think I like the level of ownership that I have. And from what I have seen, it seems to me that even if you're working at Marvel or DC, unless you're like a top level creator, you still have to go out and beat the drum to get people to read your books, to let them know when new issues are coming out. That there's a large amount of promotion that has to be done by the individual creators. And if I have to do that, or if I have to chase people and get them to come read my book anyway, it's like I might as well publish it myself and keep all the profits. I don't know necessarily if working for a publisher really would give me the ability to work full time on comics or not. I mean, I know a lot of artists who are working with publishers and they still have to work a day job. But I mean, there's some benefit to it. Like there's an artist I know, Joshua Kimball. He has a great YouTube channel. He also does the Artcasters podcast with Scott Serklin. And, he recently had his book, 2 Stories, published through a traditional publisher. And he's working on a new book too. And I think he's very happy going that traditional route. So that's not necessarily saying that it's not the way to go. I think it really comes down to what type of contract a publisher is offering you, and what the benefits that a particular publisher offers are worth it for what you want. But for me, goal 1 is keep my head down, get the work done, and that's more than enough to keep me busy. Pardon me. But in terms of chasing, like working through a publisher, I think I'd be open to it if a publisher approached me, but I'm not necessarily that interested in chasing a publisher. If someone, and that's not me being arrogant enough to say, oh, well, publishers have to come to me. But I do feel like if you're chasing someone and you just want to get published, I think the best way to get a publisher is to publish your own work. And that doesn't mean that a publisher is going to want to republish something you already put out there. But if you can prove that you can create a work of quality that there's a market for, then I think that publishers become more interested and say, all right, well, what's the next thing you have? So again, I'm not saying that I would never work with a publisher or that I'm anti-publisher. It's more that I want to keep my head down, focus on getting the work out, and then just look at opportunities as they come. So let's see here. It's Sketches says, oh, that's good, like aggressively good. Very, very kind of you to say. I appreciate that. Thank you. You also says, thank you for your insights. And Bill says, kind of depends on your if your goal is to be a successful artist or a successful YouTuber. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, back to the whole thing about YouTubers having entertaining channels. And my goal is definitely to be a successful artist. And I've always made this channel, the focus has been not necessarily the educational craft of artists. It's been sort of just a look over my shoulder and just inviting you to join me at the drawing table. That's really what it's been, is just, here's what it's like, my day-to-day creative process and what I'm making, what I'm in the middle of, and this is what it's like. So I think that, trying to be a successful YouTuber is a different endeavor. It's not necessarily that I want to pursue that as a goal, more than I want to keep my mind open to any additional avenues that would help me get my work out to more people. So there's a lot of just musing in my head, and some of that, a lot of this times, I talk about stuff, I'm like, yeah, I'm probably not really going to do that. But I think about it, and, I'll share, what I'm thinking about and considering trying with you guys as I work. And I keep zooming in and out. This is another part here with the arm where I have to keep deciding, well, what's going to add as opposed to distract. So these flames are not perfect. I'm going to massage those a bit more and then see how it looks with the glow over it. But yeah, we're getting into the home stretch with this piece. It's Sketches says, dude, I'd totally buy this if I saw this at Barnes & Noble if I was just passing by. Well, I also need to get my books. I've been just on Amazon too long. I need to get them on Ingram Spark, which is it's another book distributor, but they distribute to bookstores. So, and that's just been, I don't want to say laziness on my part. It's been laser focus in terms of just working on the book itself. But on the publishing end, as a publisher, I've been bad about getting the 2 books that I already have done, getting those on Ingram Spark so you can get wider distribution to bookstores and, more importantly, libraries. I think getting books into libraries is really important for indie creators. Because, you think about the fact that there's maybe less than 3,000 comic book shops in the United States or in North America, and there's I don't know, maybe 15,000 libraries, maybe 20,000 across the country. So, there's a lot more reach where you can get people, get your books into people's hands. And libraries, yeah, they just buy the 1 or 2 copies and they, loan out to people, but they also will buy more as those books wear out. And if you have a body of work, let's say you've got, 8, 10 books or whatever, that's the kind of thing where people read 1 or 2 books, and then they're like, if they can't get the rest of them at the library, they're like, well, hell, I'm going to go buy them. So it's a great way to get your work in front of people. So I definitely, want to make moves in that direction on the publishing side. Sarah says, it does seem like even traditional publishing, in traditional publishing, the artist author has a lot more responsibility in cultivating their brand and outreach than they might have been responsible for in the past. I listen to a lot of podcasts about book publishing, not comics, but just prose authors, fiction, fantasy, sci-fi, nonfiction. And a lot of those podcasts I listen to, they talk about the fact of artists that are there's trad pub, which is traditional publishing. There's indie authors, and then there's hybrid authors, which maybe do some books on indie, some books they work with a traditional publisher, depends on the arrangement. But I think one of the things that I've heard talked about in just publishing in general is that the individual author carries a lot more responsibility in terms of getting the books out there and getting them in front of people. So that isn't something that's specific just to comics publishing. That's publishing, writ large. So Bill says, let me see, where is he? Bill says it might be seen as an opportunity as much as a responsibility. Yes, very much so. I think that's the challenge, I think, in terms of a lot of people get tired of having to post constantly and feed the monster. And for me, the whole thing is I've just tried to make a schedule that fits into I'm just doing whatever I'm doing and sharing it as I make it. So as long as I continue to make art on a daily and weekly basis, then I have content to share. And there are weeks where I don't post much and, my day job gets busy or health problems or things going on at home and I don't necessarily have time. But I try not to let that eat me up. I just try to maintain as much of a schedule as possible, because as long as I'm driving towards getting the work done, I'm feeding the artwork. And if I'm sharing the process, then I'm feeding the social media and promotional aspect. So yeah, it's not something that I think I've mastered by any means. I think that the number of videos I have and the growth I've had on YouTube is more of the consistency of me doing this for over a decade. Because I realized I actually started my channel in 2009. So it's been over 10 years I've been on YouTube. You can watch most of Morningstar being created on YouTube. Because the very first Morningstar video I posted, I'd already published the first issue. Or I think I had completed the first issue. And the first video I have on there of Morningstar is me drawing I think I started inking issue 2. So you can literally watch most of this comic book I've been working on. If you go back to the archives to the oldest videos, you can just watch me making this comic. And you can see how my style has changed and adapted as I've gone. So let's see here. Sarah says, true, but it's definitely a conscious part of working to promote yourself in addition to traditional publishing and marketing. Yes. And Bill says, for sure, internet and social media have changed this. For sure, says Sarah. So yeah, a lot on the social media front. I think that there's people who do it very, very well and garner an audience that allows them to profit off of their work and build that audience and monetize it. There's people who don't do it at all and just focus on the artwork. And I think that I fall in the middle, but probably more on the side of just trying to make people aware of what I'm making. And honestly, another thing, me starting the YouTube channel and doing the social media, it's a product of the fact that in working a day job, at best, I've only put out like 2 issues a year. I was probably able to finish 2.5 issues in that year, but that's the fastest I've ever been, is being able to put out 2 issues a year. And for me, being on YouTube, being on Twitter and Instagram and sharing the process, that's been more about, I don't want people to think that a lot of indie creators will put out 1 or 2 issues and then just give up. And me constantly being online, sharing what I'm doing, is more of me saying that I am working slowly, but I have never stopped. I'm going to keep making work. I'm going to keep putting it out. And that's been what the biggest reason for me to be on social media is, just so people don't forget that I'm still working and making stuff. So guess what? Surprise, with all of the talking we did end up going an extra half hour. All right, guys. Everybody, thank you so much for showing up. Bill, thanks so much. And Sarah, for the great comments and conversation about publishing. It's Sketches. Thank you for joining me the first time. I hope you'll be back for others. Definitely, subscribe and share the video if there's other friends that you think would like it. Amar, everybody else that showed up, thank you again so much. And as always, if you would like to get additional bonus live streams, in fact, tomorrow I need to post on Patreon the schedule for our art book study group, where we study from some of the best art books out there and try to suck all the knowledge we can out. That's at patreon.com/GERIMI. Art book study group is just one of the many things available on Patreon. You can also read all of Morningstar on Patreon. I've got the pages posted there. So you can check that out at patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to sign up for my monthly newsletter, getting my work in progress gifts, animated gifts sent directly to your inbox, along with blog posts, links to some of the live stream highlights. That's all at newsletter.jeremy.net. I'll also let you know when I've got new events. When events open back up again, that'll all be there in the monthly newsletter. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my books, my first book, Eye of the Gods, psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control, go to amazon.jeremy.net. My current book, Morningstar, Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. This book contains issues 1 through 4. You can get those on Comixology also, and on Amazon Kindle if you read digitally. So guys, thank you so much for spending time, for hanging out, all the great comments and feedback. Let's see. It Sketches says, my GC quaking from all your YouTube. I'm sharing a lot. Well, thank you for sharing. Bill says the barrier for entry in the arts has never been lower, but now there's a lot more competition as a result. Very, very true. You know what? And that is the reason why we all have to strive to put out the best work we're capable of. It's not perfect, but we do the best we can every week and put that out there, because I do believe that quality, the cream does rise to the top. So if you're putting out good work and interesting work, creative work, you can find an audience out there. It may take some time, may take a decade, but stick with it and keep sharing that work. That's it for now. Go be creative.